Hey, everybody, welcome back to Connect. I'm your host, Andy Hale. We took a little bit of a break. I had a vacation down in Florida, recharged the batteries, spent some time brainstorming, and I've got an interesting update today. Things are going to take a little bit of a turn here on Connect. I want to give you the backstory. I want to tell you why I started the Connect podcast. I want to tell you how that all came about and how we got here and where we're going. Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be an interesting conversation. Keep an open mind. Here we go. So, I was on LinkedIn. This is a few months back, several months ago, probably 3 or 4 months ago. And there's a friend of mine in Chicago. She's an attorney. Her name is Monica Burkhoff. And she had a LinkedIn post about her podcast called Confidence Council. I didn't know she had a podcast. I was like, wow, this sounds really cool. Check it out. Confidence Council. Monica empowers women to be the most powerful version of themselves. It's motivating, it's uplifting, it's also very spiritual. So I checked out her podcast. I told her, hey, I really liked your podcast. And then, in line with what I say on Connect, I met with her face to face. I said, come on by my office. Let's talk. We hadn't seen each other in a while. We actually had tried a case together a few years back. She's an awesome trial lawyer. So she came out of my office. We just had coffee. We sat around and we kind of just brainstormed. And I told her how much I loved her podcast. And she said to me, did you listen to the episode about the spiritual medium? And I said, no, I saw that one, but I kind of skipped over it. It just sounded like I don't know what a spiritual medium is. It sounded a little weird, because I listened to several of her episodes, but I literally skipped over that one. It was an interview with a woman named Jessica Snyder, who's a spiritual medium. She's like, oh my God, Andy, you've got to listen to this episode. So I'm like, okay, I'll check it out. Well, I listened and I was blown away. I got to tell you, I was just blown away. And I'll preface this, I have had no exposure to this. So what Jessica Snyder said on this podcast was she is a spiritual medium, which is she lives in Toronto. She was a former school teacher. She tells the story of how she got to where she's at now. And what she'll say is a spiritual medium is somebody. So according to Jessica, we all have a spirit guide that basically follows us along on our journey in life. And it's like a little life coach that kind of lives inside us, that tries to keep us on the path that's to make sure that we're living the most fully aligned life that we were intended to live, the most purposeful and aligned life. And what Jessica does is she has developed this ability to tap into spirits. So, like my spirit guide, your spirit guide, anybody's spirit guide. I'm going to have her on the podcast next episode. So, I'm going to get into this deeper and I'm going to have her explain it better than me. But this podcast episode on Confidence Council, when Monica interviewed Jessica, and then she shared part of her session with Jessica, where Jessica did a reading of Monica's spirit guide. I was so fascinated by this. And do you ever have something where it just clicks? It just resonates. It just makes so much sense. That was my reaction to everything I heard Jessica say to Monica. I was just riveted and it made so much sense to me. So, what did I do? I didn't just leave it at that. You know me now, people who've been listening. I booked my own session with Jessica. It's a 90-minute session. And basically, you start out, there's a meditation, and then Jessica channels your spirit guide. Now, let me pause. For people out there who are like, what is Andy talking about? I get it. I get it. I was in the same position as you were. I didn't know either. I had never heard of this, but the more I heard about it and the more I learned and the more I heard Jessica talk, the more it hit me powerfully. So I did this session with Jessica where she tapped into my spirit guide. She told me a lot of things about myself that I thought really were true and really resonated. One of the things, and she's channeling this from my spirit guide, was that, I'm an old soul. I've been around a long time. And what Jessica will say is we're all just spiritual beings having a human experience, which makes sense to me too. I've always been a spiritual person. And I've always felt like an old soul. I don't get upset about things. I don't worry about things. Sometimes I just kind of go through life in a more just in a kind of easier way. I don't get worked up over things. And I feel like when she said I was an old soul, that just made so much sense to me. But let me get to the punchline. So when I asked, well, what is my purpose? What is my passion? It wasn't necessarily like all the things I'm doing. My spirit guide said are great. I'm a civil rights attorney. I've been helping try to get people out of prison, doing podcasts, kind of shining a light on injustices, storytelling. All those things are great, and those are aligned with who I am. But the message I got was, what you really, really are aligned to do is to kind of spread this message about how everybody's got the power to basically change their life. To You have the power to dictate how your life goes, the circumstances you find yourself in, what you want to do with your life. It's not like you're born and you get a resume and that's just your resume for life and you're stuck with it. No, you control your life through the choices you make, through the thoughts you think, through the actions you take, through all the connections you make. And so my spirit guide, and it's funny when I say it like that, my spirit guide was telling me, you already have a podcast. Start with something just called like a motivational Monday, which I did this. If you went back and listened to those people who listened to my Starve Rock Murders podcast, I started a motivational Monday episode where I just kind of talked about, creating opportunities in life. But the message I got from my spirit guide is you need to start a podcast and you need to lean into spreading this message. And that is how Connect started. Now, the first several episodes we've done, I've just been sharing what I kind of call life lessons. I didn't get into this backstory. I thought about starting with the backstory, but I didn't want to necessarily have people tune out immediately. I wanted them to kind of hear what I had to say. But I feel like now is the time. Now is the time to share this backstory about how I got here and why I got here. And I would have never thought in a million years I'd be on a podcast talking about a spiritual medium, a spirit guide, my own spirit guide, the message I got from my spirit guide. But that's where we're at. And I got to tell you, I'll say it again. This has all hit me very, very powerfully. It just makes sense to me. I've always felt like I had a sense of intuition. And what my spirit guide said and what Jessica said is, we all have this ability. She said, we all have this ability to tap into, messages, essentially downloads, let's say, from the universe. Some people are good at it. They're just attuned to it. Most of us aren't. We just don't notice it. There's too much clutter in our minds. There's too much going on. But we all can do it. But I've always felt like a very intuitive person. I've always felt like I did receive messages like that. As I've talked about in this podcast, I've talked about how I've created all these opportunities over the years by connecting with people and the things I've done. So, what I'm going to do going forward is I'm going to have Jessica Snyder come on this podcast and we're going to talk a little bit about a spiritual medium, her reading of me, kind of where we got, a little more educational. And then the way this podcast is going to go is I'm just going to share the things that are essentially downloaded to me from the universe. And what I mean by that is when I was talking to Jessica last week, I had another session with her. My spirit guy was saying, you don't even need to have notes. Don't even plan it. Just literally turn on the microphone each week and whatever needs to be told will come out. And there's going to be calls to action. It's going to be things we're going to do together. Maybe it's reaching out to a loved one. Maybe it's connecting with somebody. I've got a lot of ideas, but I want to build a sense of community and let people join me on this journey, just talking about these different issues, the way we can live a truly aligned life, the lessons I learned, the downloads I get from my spirit guide. It's going to be a journey. I think it's going to be a fun journey. I think it's going to be a fascinating journey. And there might be some of you out there that kind of get this. I think more of you probably are going to be puzzled and be like, I don't know what he's talking about. I get it. Believe me, I get it. I would just ask you, be patient, have an open mind, join me on this journey. Listen to what I have to say. I think it's going to really resonate with most people. I think it's going to be beneficial. It's going to be helpful. You got nothing to lose. It's going to be fun. So, I just for today wanted to share how do we get here? And that's how we got here. The next episode, I'm going to get Jessica on here. I got to talk to her about scheduling. I'm going to get Jessica Snyder on here. We're going to have a little more of a conversation about spiritual mediums, spirit guides, and then we're going to just be off to the races with new episodes every week. Whatever comes into my brain, whatever's downloaded to me that day, that week, I'm going to share it. It's going to be that simple. So I hope you join me for this ride. It's going to be fun. Stay tuned. This podcast was produced by Phineas Ellis and Studio Friends, design and promotion by Bell and Ivy. I'm your host, Andy Hale. Join me next week for another episode of Connect. I can't wait.